Good morning, students. Today I'll start with Chapter 3, Constitutional Design. In the previous videos, I explained you Chapter 2, that is, what is democracy by democracy. I hope you all are clear with the terms democracy, referendum, rule of law, popular leader, etc. And you all would also be clear with why is democracy considered the best form of government? And what are the key features of democracy? That is, what are the features that a democratic government must follow? Now, in this chapter, what we are going to study is that in democracy, the rulers are not free to do what they like. There are certain basic rules that the citizens and the government have to follow. And all such rules are mentioned in the constitution. So the first thing is that a constitution does not only mention the rules and regulations to be followed by the people, but it also talks about the rules that has to be followed by the government. That is, a constitution restricts the absolute power of government, which is called as limited government. I mean, the power of government is restricted or limited by the constitution. As I already told you that a government has also to remain in its limit. If the constitution does not restrict the power of government, the government may turn dictatorial in nature, and then it cannot be called as a democratic country. In this chapter, we ask some basic questions about the constitutional design of a democracy. That is, why do we need a constitution? How are the constitutions drawn up? Who designs them and in what way? What is the need of a constitution? We need a constitution because all the rules and regulations are written over there. And whenever a law is made, the laws should be in lines with the norms of the constitution. So here comes the role of judiciary. If the laws are not in lines with the norms of the constitution, the judiciary can say that the law is invalid and against the provisions of the constitution. Then, if the constitution is mandatory, who makes this constitution? What are the values that are kept in mind when constitution is to be made? And then at last, we'll study or we'll come across the case study of Constitution of South Africa. That is how the democratic constitution of South Africa was made. And then at last, how the Indian constitution was made, what are the foundational values, and how it provides a good framework for the conduct of citizens' life and that of the government. So we start with the Constitution of South Africa. South Africa had the rule of white people. The population of the country was divided into three. That is, the blacks, who were the natives of South Africa, colored, people of mixed races. One thing that you must keep in mind, that whenever you come across the word race, here race does not mean a kind of competition. वो दौड़ने के competition को यहाँ race नहीं बोल रहे हैं. सिविक्स में जब भी रेस की बात हो, रेसिज्म की बात हो, रेशियल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की बात हो, रेस हियर मीन्स कलर ऑफ स्किन. So whenever you come across words like racism, racial discrimination, it means discrimination which is practiced on the basis of color of skin. Yes, in Hindi जिसे हम कहते हैं काले गोरे का भेदभाव. The system of apartheid was in practice. Now what is apartheid? Apartheid was the name of a system of racial discrimination unique to South Africa. ये एक ऐसा discrimination था which was practiced on the basis of color of skin, and specifically apartheid was oppressive for blacks. Now under this, what happened? The blacks were forbidden from living in white areas. जो black people थे, they could not reside in white areas. They could work in white areas only if they had permit. If any kind of job or any kind of work they had to do in the areas which was infested with whites, they had to take special permission. Policy of segregation was followed. Segregation means any kind of separation or division. So what was this policy of segregation? All the public places or public utilities, blacks were forbidden into these kind of areas. That is trains, buses, taxis, hotels, hospitals, schools and colleges, libraries, cinema halls, theaters, beaches, swimming pools were all separate for the whites and blacks. So this is called as policy of segregation. And not only this, blacks could not even visit the churches where the whites worship. And despite all these, blacks could not form any kind of associations or protest against the terrible treatment. That is, the right to form association or right to assembly, which is guaranteed to us under Article 19 of the Fundamental Rights. This right was not given to the blacks. They could not form any kind of association and they could not also protest against the terrible treatment, that is apartheid. So this policy of segregation continued for long. But as we all know that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The same thing happened over here. So since 1950, the blacks, colored and Indians fought against the apartheid system. So the people of South Africa, the blacks, they could not tolerate this oppression or suppression for long and they started fighting against the indiscriminatory system, that is apartheid. African National Congress led the struggle against the policy of segregation. African National Congress was an umbrella organization that included many workers' union and the Communist Party. So they all started a struggle against the policy of segregation. Many sensitive whites also joined the ANC or African National Congress to oppose apartheid. There were many sensitive whites who had realized that whatever was being done by the white government was unjust, and therefore they also joined this struggle against apartheid. And there were several countries also who claimed or who announced that apartheid was unjust in nature and any kind of racism should not be practiced. But the white racist government did not listen to the demands of blacks and it continued to rule by detaining. That is, they jailed the people who spoke against them, they tortured the people and they killed thousands of black and colored people who wanted this apartheid system to come to an end. But the protest and struggle against apartheid had increased. The people were not ready now to tolerate any more atrocity. Atrocities का मतलब होता है अत्याचार. The government realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their rule through repression. The government, the white government had realized कि now हम लोग जो है अब बहुत देर तक अब हम लोग इससे ज्यादा और इन्हें सप्रेस नहीं कर सकते हैं. The white regime changed its policies. The white government now decided that whatever they have done up till now, that needs to come to an end, as it happened in our country. There was a time when the British rulers, they decided that now it is the time to bring our power to an end, and that is how we attained independence. Discriminatory laws were repealed. All the laws which discriminated between blacks and whites, they were taken back. Ban on political parties and restrictions on the media were lifted. In our previous videos, when I was talking about lesson number 2, I had already explained that what is ban on media. Ban on media means press. The press is not allowed to show what is the real truth. The press can only show or bring into the people what the government wants to show. That is, press is censored, media is censored. It has to work according to the whims and fancies of the government. जो government चाहता है वही media दिखा सकता है. Unlike our country, you see, here all the journalists and all the news anchors, if you see, if they find there is something wrong, they are free to speak it. And this is how we come to know what is going on. So here, up till and unless apartheid system continued, there was ban on press. And that kind of ban on political parties and press that was lifted. After 28 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela walked out of the jail as a free man. Finally, at the midnight of 26 April 1994, the new national flag of the Republic of South Africa was unfurled. Now, who was Nelson Mandela? Your chapter starts with a speech delivered by Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a very popular leader. He was a leader of ANC. This was Nelson Mandela being tried for treason by the white South African government. Treason means an attempt to overthrow the existing government, जिसे हम हिंदी में राजद्रोह या देशद्रोह भी बोलते हैं. ट्रेटर, जिसने अपने देश को या सरकार को धोखा देने की कोशिश की हो. But actually, he never tried to betray the government. His only fault was that he dared to oppose the apartheid regime in his country. He and 7 other leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964 for daring to oppose the apartheid regime in his country. What was his fault? His fault was that he wanted to bring in equality in his country. He wanted this discrimination to end. So, on no ground it can be called as treason. But the white government was so dictatorial in nature that for this thing he was imprisoned for 28 years. He spent the next 28 years in South Africa's most dreaded prison, most fearful prison, Robben Island. So with all the efforts of ANC and other great leaders, the apartheid government came to an end, paving way for the formation of a multiracial government. So what does this word multiracial mean? Multiracial means a government formed by all, that is blacks, whites and colored. After the emergence of the new democratic South Africa, blacks leaders appealed to fellow blacks to forgive the whites for the atrocities. Atrocities मतलब अत्याचार या किसी भी प्रकार की यातना. So now the black leaders had decided that we will believe in what? Forget and forgive. They were not going to do the same what the whites had done to them. They said, let us build a new South Africa based on equality of all races and men and women. So, if they would do the same what whites had done to them, तो फिर भी equality तो नहीं आती. Okay. On democratic values, that is, everyone would be equal in the eye of law. Social justice and human rights. Now what will prevail? Social justice. Everyone will be socially equal. No discrimination on the basis of color of skin. And human rights. All kind of rights. By the virtue of being a human, जो rights हमें मिलने चाहिए, everyone will be getting equal rights. The party that ruled through oppression and brutal killings, that is whites. And the party that led the freedom struggle, that was blacks. They sat together to draw up a common constitution. So a constitution was to be drawn which would be same for both blacks and whites. After 2 years of discussion and debate, so it took 2 years to write a common constitution for South Africa. In our case, it took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So making of a constitution is not such an easy task. This constitution gave to its citizens the most extensive rights available in any country. That is, all rights that one could think of was given to the people of South Africa. The preamble to the South African Constitution sums up this spirit. The preamble means the introduction to the Constitution. Even our Constitution has a preamble. So the preamble sums up the values that is there in the Constitution. The South African Constitution inspires Democrats all over the world, a state denounced by the entire world till recently as the most undemocratic one, is now seen as a model of democracy. Why? Because the people, that is both blacks and whites, they sat together to bring in a common constitution. So the blacks did not keep the bitter experiences in their mind. They forgot and they forgave the whites and they sat together, and what made the change possible was the determination of the people of South Africa to work together to transform bitter experiences into the binding glue of a rainbow nation. You know why it is called as a rainbow nation? Blacks, colored and whites. They all were living together and there was a common constitution for them. All the colors staying together in harmony. That is why it is called as a rainbow nation. And that's the reason that now it is seen as a model of democracy. A country in which the people had suffered a lot, now they all were living together in harmony and they were practicing fraternity or brotherhood. Thank you, students. We'll meet again in the next lecture.